Now happy to be joined by Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Of course, you Vanderbilt people know him well from covering Vanderbilt. I think it was from 2014 to 2019, or 2020, I think. So Adam, of course, has covered his fair share of Vanderbilt games, and now he's up there in Knoxville covering Tennessee. And I feel like we try to get you on every time Vanderbilt Tennessee get together. Adam, I want to start with, and it's kind of a weird angle, but you have covered Vanderbilt, and you covered them for a while, and kind of, I think entrenched yourself with a lot of the fans and just your great coverage. You haven't covered them this year. 2-9, probably looking like a 2-10 season. From your experience, what is it? Obviously, it's probably a pretty easy answer here. What's it like to cover them? But in terms of dealing with a season like this, from a coaching staff perspective, you dealt with Coach Mason a lot during that time. What is it like? I mean, and for Vanderbilt right now, I mean, what are they dealing with as a staff? And then I guess for someone that has covered them, what is kind of this whole experience like, and finding hope, because it's hard to right now, if you're a Vanderbilt person.
Yeah, I think covering Vandy always had a similar tone as maybe being a fan of Vandy, because covering Vandy football, you could sort of transition to basketball once it got late in the year. If it was a bad year, and when I covered Derrick Mason, and the last one I covered, they were 0-9. It was COVID year. Everything was awful. But there was a 3-9 in there, I think, a 4-8 maybe. So there were bad years, but once you get to like October, November, you could start talking about basketball. In October, you could start talking about Tim Corbin's fall ball. You could talk about baseball. And so I felt like Vandy fans always sort of did the same thing. Football's bad. Let's move on. Like I cover Tennessee football now year round. And obviously Tennessee football is a different animal on its own. But I don't transition into something else. It is football all the time. So if things are bad, they're really, really bad. I felt like Vandy football was always insulated in that way. And from afar, somewhat, I look at Vandy football now and say, they're not really good at a thing. I always thought that was probably the challenge more than anything with Vandy. And whenever they would change coaches or change philosophies, it's a little bit like Vanderbilt's a little bit like a service academy. Like, you don't want to play service academies, Navy, Army, whoever, when they have triple option team. Georgia Tech used to have the same thing years ago. I'm not saying Vandy should go triple option. I went around and around with that when I was a Vandy beat writer with fans. But like, you got to be good at a thing. And so Vanderbilt, I look at and say, what is it that would concern an opponent? And I don't really know what that is. You would think it would have been defense under Clark Lee. It hasn't been. Quarterback play was better, then it was not as good. When Derrick Mason was there, in 2016, he beat Kirby Smart because he had a really, really good defense. Derrick did.
Almost beat Auburn.
Yeah, almost beat Auburn. Zach Cunningham was there. Warren Burks was there after that. When they were beating Tennessee those years, Kyle Shermer would have started on. He would have been a really, really good player on just about any SEC team that year. And so you had a thing. Right now, I think Vandy's just like mediocre to not good at everything, and you've got to have a spike somewhere on your roster. And I just don't think they have that. And I think when you have that one thing, especially at Vanderbilt, you can hang your hat on that. You can say, hey, we're good at defense if we could only shore up the offensive side or something. Or, hey, we got the quarterback if we can just find some wide receivers. And I just don't know that Clark Lee has found that thing yet for fans to hang their hat on.
You mentioned Coach Mason, and I think y'all two have an interesting relationship. I think a lot of people do. Coach Mason is a personable guy, and I think there's still a level of respect from Vanderbilt people towards him. Of course, it didn't end well, but he was able to land a job at Auburn, and then I think he went to Oklahoma State, and now he's calling games on the SEC network, and I think he's done a good job. I think with Dave Neal, and he'll be on the call Saturday. And I think the SEC knew right away that they're going to send Coach Mason over there to Knoxville. And it's interesting because I think out of anybody, you're probably closer or closest to him and built a relationship. And I think I saw you posted on Twitter a few weeks ago a picture with him, and because he was covering the Tennessee game. So what has been your relationship with Coach Mason? And I guess you got to get a chuckle out of the fact that, they sent him over to there to Knoxville. And what better guy to do that? I mean, he beat Tennessee 3 times and is well familiar with Tennessee and this Vanderbilt rivalry. But just kind of describe your relationship with him and how that has grown over the years.
Yeah, Tennessee fans have this thing about they really are irritated by certain broadcasters like Gary Danielson with CBS. And I'll be curious to see how they react if Derrick is asked quite a bit during the broadcast about beating Tennessee. I don't think that'll go over that well. He's done, I think this is maybe his 3rd Tennessee game this year. I've talked to him a little bit in the press box. The time that I had the photo with him a few weeks ago, I spent quite a long time up in the booth with him really just talking ball and what he sees out of different players and different teams. And we were talking about what broadcasting is like for him. He still lives in Nashville, loves living in Nashville. I don't think he would mind me saying that, like, one of the things we talked about was that his mood leaving games now is different than it was then, because when you're an SEC coach, you live and die on whatever that result is that Saturday. And if you're winning, you're at the top of the mountain. And if you're losing, it's the deepest valley. And he said, when I leave games now, it's just, you just clock out of work and you go home. And I said, yeah, Derrick, I said, remember back when I covered you, and it didn't look like there was a lot of emotion, like really happy or really sad, because it's just a job. And I didn't win or lose today as long as I did my job in the media. And he said, yeah, I get that now. I get it. I get it. And I think there's a part of him that enjoys not having to have a win or loss hung around his workday. And so I think that's been good for him. He's been in demand. People have called him to be, especially their defensive coordinator. He's had opportunities in the NFL. He's had opportunities in college football and Power Fives, I think in the SEC. A lot of people would love to have him as a D coordinator, but he's enjoying his time right now with ESPN and the SEC Network. And I can tell he's getting better at it. He always had sort of a cadence about him, when he coached Vandy, of how he would talk and have one-liners and all that. And he's starting to pick up on that, the cadence of a broadcaster. Over the years, I've called him, talked to him on the phone a few times. I would text him, text more than anything. If you've ever gotten a text from Derrick Mason, it's gonna be loaded with emojis. So I like texting using a lot of emojis. He also does. When he used to text when he was the Vandy coach, it would be an anchor and then a bicep, anchor strong. So I can't remember what his ones are now, but yes, I've stayed in touch with him over the years. When I covered him, there were a number of stories that I wrote that did not put him in a good light as a coach. But he and I had talked about over the years that, this is my job and this is just part of it, and it's nothing personal, and have no vendetta against you. But when you lose games or when you make bad decisions, I have to write about that. And he always was fine with it. One of the first stories I ever did on Derrick was when during the Vandy rape trial, and there were recruits coming into town during that, commitments. And I had the terrible job of having to reach out to commitments and ask them how they felt about going on the campus and doing this visit while all this was in the media. Kyle Shermer was one of those, if I remember right.
Wow.
And Shermer answered the phone and said, "No, it's fine. Has nothing to do with this coach or this team, and I'll be in Nashville, and I'll sign with Vandy." And Derrick did not like that. That was one of my first assignments as Vandy beat writer, and but he got over that, and I got over it, and it went fine. He's an easy guy to like, that's for sure.
Oh, no doubt. Just one of the great guys in the business. He'll be on the call there with Dave Neal. 2:30 kickoff there on SEC Network. And speaking of that game, we won't get into much of this matchup, at least in the weeds. Obviously, Tennessee favored by 25.5. I think last time I saw. Looking at last year, Adam, we talked the week of the game last year, and I think there was a small sentiment on the Vanderbilt side that, they had won 2 straight SEC games and had some momentum going into that game. But for Tennessee, I think there was a level of confidence heading into that, at least within the building and people that cover the program. Remember, you were pretty confident Tennessee would get back on track and beat Vanderbilt. It was 56-0. I think that surprised some people, probably not, a lot of the Tennessee people. But this year, do you think there's that same potential? Of course, Tennessee, different offense, different quarterback, different play caller, different receivers. They're banged up. They've lost a couple of games against really good teams. So they are beat up. But do you think there's that same potential for this to really get out of hand?
No, I don't. I mean, it wouldn't shock me because there is still, if this offense can get going, it's still the same offense. It's different pieces, though. The way that if Tennessee were to win, have like a 40, 50 point blowout win in this one, it would be because of the running game, probably not as much the pass.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee can really run the ball against average to bad opponents. If you're a good team, Tennessee does not run the ball that well on you. But if you're average to below average, they can hang 300 rushing yards on you. Now, they've got some injuries. Both tackles were out last week. One of their backup tackles, I think, is going to be out for this one. So there could be anywhere from 1 to 3 tackles out of this game. Their starting guard is out for this game. So the offensive line is really, really beat up. But they'll still be able to run the ball to a reasonable degree. I mean, Tennessee is limited in what they can do compared to everything that they did last year. There's no question about that. I guess more the question is Vandy going to be more like UConn, which Tennessee hung 59 on, or is Vandy going to be more like Kentucky that they put 33 on? I think probably in between the two. Like I think of the paper here, I think I picked the game like 38-21 or 38-17 or something like that. I think that's probably something where it's going to be. This team is not. I can't say this team is completely down. That's more of an individual basis. But the momentum from this season, if whatever Tennessee had at one time, has really evaporated. They got blown out by Missouri. They got blown out by Georgia. And I can tell you this week, everything that I've been asked by fans and everything I'm writing is all about 2024. Nobody's even paying attention to this game. I'm sure the players are, although we'll know that by the result. But everything is about the transfer portal, which seniors are coming back with a COVID year. Can they hang on to their recruits? When are we going to see Nico, the freshman 5-star quarterback? Everything is about next season. Nothing is about this season from a fan and media perspective. So we'll see if that has an effect on the game. I think it'll be a pretty competitive game. I think Tennessee will win it. Tennessee will win. I think Vandy covers. I think that's the way I put it.
Well, and most people that tune into this matchup, Adam, are probably looking for Nico, right? They might check late first half. If Nico's in there, they might stay there. If he's not, well, we'll wait till Nico goes in. I think that is kind of the perception. How much of Nico do you think we see? I think it's official that they redshirted him. And we didn't really know that until, I don't know if Heupel said it, or if it got out. But I think there were some people frustrated that it just now got out. I think within the last week or so. But how much of Nico do we see? And you think it's a second half type thing? Do you think it's okay? This game was out of hand. We'll throw Nico in. What do you think there on Nico?
Yeah, I think the red shirt, it wasn't as much, I think, a clear-cut decision as it was just sort of the math of the situation. You can play 4 regular season games or fewer. He had played 3, and they just kind of made the decision in November, let's play him 1 more, not 2 more, and burn that red shirt for, basically to throw 3 passes at the end of the Georgia game or whatever it would be in. So the Vandy game will be his 4th game. Bowl games don't count from what we're told. That's still the rule, apparently. So he can play as much as they want him to play in the Vandy game. This is senior day, though, and Joe Milton, the starter, is a 6th-year senior that hung around Tennessee for another chance to start. There's a lot of loyalty shown to him by the coaches and his teammates. He'll start. I have no doubt about that because it's senior day, and they're going to stick with him. I would suspect Nico – I mean, if the game is within like 3 touchdowns, I don't think we see Nico until 4th quarter. If the game is an outright blowout, then maybe you see Nico in the third quarter. I don't think we see him in the first half. I mean, if Tennessee was up 35-0 in the second quarter, which I don't think that's going to happen, but if they were, I don't think Nico would be out there then. I think they would wait to the second half and start him in the second half. That's the most. They have not done the let's see Nico early thing all year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to change that much in this one. So anybody expecting him to see him early, I would wait till the second half. But again, if this game is competitive, Josh Heupel wants to be 8-4. And if that means playing Nico 2 drives in the fourth quarter as opposed to 4 drives, then he's going to keep Joe Milton in as long as he thinks that gives him the best chance to win.
We'll see. 2:30, Vandy and Tennessee on the SEC Network. Adam, looking forward to it. Enjoy Thanksgiving with you and your family. Luckily, you're not covering the Egg Bowl, and so you have Thanksgiving off. So good on you for that. But thanks for taking the time and enjoy the weekend.
Yep, good to be on.